Eamonn O'Brien, and you're very welcome to the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series. And coming up today, we're going to talk about what it really takes to win over investors and why you need to think beyond big ideas to make sure that folks get excited about your ideas. And I'm delighted to be joined today by techpreneur Chris Byrne, all the way from Dingle. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Eamonn, and thanks for having me here today.
Good. Now, Chris, just by way of background, you're formerly a co-founder of cashbook.com, which you sold many years ago for a very substantial sum. And since then, you've been involved with SensorPro, which I gather is about marketing automation platforms. And somewhere in all of your time or lack of time, you managed to also be a coordinator of Coder Dojo in Dingle and have your own chili Chris con carne.
Yeah, well, you've read my blog then, obviously, when you call me a techpreneur. Actually,
I paid attention.
Thank you. Yeah, it's. I think I spelled it correctly, but it's funny you say that because I've actually just come from our Tuesday session because we run the Coder Dojo in Dingle on Tuesday at 4 p.m.
Oh, right.
You can't run it on a Saturday because you're competing with the Dingle GAA. So
that's right. You can't interfere with that.
Yeah, and it is hard work doing it, but every time we come away, you just go, wow, the future is age 9, and I just keep getting reminded of that every time we do one. I mean, today we had the guys programming robots and whatnot. And I just think, wow, when I was that age, if I had that opportunity, what a gift! And you have to.
It's inspirational. Now, Chris, when we met recently at the University of Limerick, we were at a WhatsApp startup conference at the Kenny Business School. We were talking about what it takes to win over investors, and one of the things we were talking about is why startups really need to get far beyond big ideas and to actually get people excited about their team as much and sometimes more than the idea if they want to bring people on board. Why do you think that's so important?
I think you might be referencing the discussion that was had around the whole sales element in the startup world. I think we're all fantastic and great at the technical aspects and the coding and so on. And there's you can't hold a candle to us on that. I think.
Yes.
One of the things I don't see talked about much, and which was one of the things I was delighted to see at the Wild Atlantic Startup thing, was that people started talking about sales. And we don't have enough of that in terms of connecting the sales skill and the storytelling skill with the whole technical aspect. Now, that problem is there. That problem was there 20 years ago. It's still there today, and I think it was Maura Moore from AIB Venture who was talking about it.
Yes.
So whatever about redressing the issues of technical skills and so on. We really need to address the issue of communication and the issue of sales. And our company, we have used your services in the past, and that was entirely coincidental that we actually.
Entirely so, yeah.
We actually met up, but in my career time frame, which is going back a while, we've always had to train people how to communicate. There's always been a difficulty, with our graduate pool in terms of the ability to speak clearly and communicate. And if you've got a great idea, it's no good if you can't speak to it in a clear way. And that's, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I was going to say that, so when you're looking at a potential a startup idea, or you're trying to just gauge what you think might be the outcome of that, what are the kinds of things that you tend to assess, or What are you looking for? What do you want to hear about from these folks?
Well, I start to cry if they can't communicate it clearly, because it isn't because it's going to be difficult for me to try and understand what this is about, but I know the difficult road that that person has for themselves, in the sense that they have to go and position this to other people who may not be as sensitive as we would
Yes.
to that difficulty, and just boot them out after 30 seconds. So fixing that problem, I think, is number one. And number two is the again, we've used the services of the good Ed Fidgen Kavanagh, Claire Prezzo, and creating PowerPoints. Now, I've created PowerPoints all my life, and but I'm happy to say I've sent my stuff over to Ed and say, can work your magic on that. So getting help with getting the help with presenting your idea clearly, not just verbally, but in the deck format.
And you used an interesting word there, Chris. You talked earlier on about the importance of story. And I think that has to be front and center, of course, because it adds meaning. And so in terms of your own experience and things that, if you like, you've seen people do well, or how they've learned to do these things, what do you think is at the core of boosting credibility in terms of story?
Well, actually, someone put it better than I can, and again, we're going back to the Wild Atlantic startup. I think it was Paul Hayes who said that people remember the experience, not what you say, and
Yes.
they remember how you made them feel, and that struck a chord with me. I thought that was really well put by Paul,
Yeah,
and
I think that's a really nice phrase. Yeah.
well, because it's true, and that you asked what are the things you look at. There are two questions I always ask, and I ask, is it true? Where is the evidence to support your proposition? And the story is part of that, because the story helps you remember. And so having a story that clearly explains or resonates with your proposition is really important. In terms of, after I've told this, will this make people feel the experience I need them to feel in terms of my proposition?
Yes, yes.
That's
But
what
I
I
think
think.
also, I suppose, that really focusing on the team and what they've been able to do so far, what they can do, and being able to show that, I suppose, would add more meaning.
Yeah, well, of course, the team is critical, um, and the I, in terms of what an investor will look at, there are different types of investors, and companies creating businesses now are spoiled for choice, really, when you compare to when we would have started up with
Yes,
Kickstarter campaigns, crowdfunding campaigns, angel investors, investors who want more involvement, and investors who want less involvement. So there are specialty investors, so there are guys like Intel Capital who have a particular focus, or uh, investors who only invest in healthcare. So you can go, there are niches within niches, and uh, when you do that, it makes it easier to resonate with who you are pitching to,
yes,
and that makes it so much easier for them. But in terms of if you're asking about the principle, obviously having the experience is important. Having the practical experience of having done it elsewhere is good. But then again, I was talking with someone about this earlier this week, and their suggestion was, well, I should just really go work for Google for a year. and then I can go say I'm an ex-Googler.
Well, I suppose you could do that too. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's another way, I guess, of that's another way of marketing yourself, I
Yeah.
suppose.
If I can go back for a second, Chris, you mentioned 20 years ago and how things maybe were a little bit easier. But if you think back to the lessons that you really picked up from your own experience when you were raising monies and getting folks prepared to back your businesses in the past, what were the key things that you really learnt maybe the hard way and maybe things that you might do differently this time?
Um, yeah, well, I have no formula, first of all, and what I would say, what I'm about to say, reflects my personal experience. So it's not necessarily a magic bullet. It's just what worked for us. But yes, you're right. I have taken away certain things that I still use to this day, and there are two things. One is there obviously is a fear there for anyone looking for investment, a fear of, will I look stupid? Will they hate my idea?
Sure.
Will I not perform? All of these things. And I don't know who said it to me at the time, but this saying has really resonated with me, and that is that other guy puts his pants on one leg at a time too. And it was great. I said, we're all human beings here, and we
Yes.
all do things similarly, and that's what I would say to folks is say, remember that in the morning that guy puts his pants on one leg at a time too.
Yes.
Um, but the other one that's really helped is another kind of saying that's evolved, and that is that customer aid outperforms grant aid every single time.
What's
And
that phrase again?
customer aid outperforms grant aid every time.
All right. Yes.
And again, this is particular to our approach in that it was trendy, is that a word, at the time that you would spend a lot of time looking for grant aid for your business to get it going, which it's necessary at times. But if you use all your efforts to do that, then you use all your efforts to do that. And it means you're not putting your efforts into other things, like getting customers. So what we actually did was we ignored that track and focused on customers. And, the customer testimonial was much more important than saying we got X from X investor. Um, the
Yeah.
customer's voice of saying we use it, we like it, and I'd recommend it speaks much more than an investment. So if I were doing this, I would be saying to people, relentlessly focus on making that happen at you know at every single time, and focus on that.
Yeah.
If
You're
you modify,
absolutely right because time and again, what I see in working with investors is that they will listen to any number of ideas, they will listen to your forecast, they listen to all of these things, and still what they want to see is 1 month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, did you do what you said you would do? Did the customers who you said would get excited belly up to the bar?
yeah, exactly. And you see, if you take that approach, you are doing exactly what the investor wants. In other words, you should be ignoring them in the sense that you're focused on the business. You're focused on growing the business. Obviously, you're building the technology, and obviously you're uh, growing out the customer base, because that is exactly what they want you to do. Then you are an investable business.
Yes, and I like that idea because it is an investable business, but also it's much easier to back the fellows who are going to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah, and I know you know, Eamon, at the Wild Atlantic Startup Conference, I know there was a great debate with Conor Murphy, wasn't it, of
Yes.
Teamwork PM and someone else on the bootstrap argument, bootstrap versus investor argument. And were you at that?
No, I had to disappear before that. But
Yeah,
I was kind of bummed because I knew that would be a good conversation.
yeah. Well, that was a good that was a good conversation, and if it's online, people should go take a look at it. And I think Connor has written a blog on it, and they could easily find it and Google it. And I'd recommend they do that because you know folks really need to look at both sides and not be you know not be moved along into one particular avenue because they think that's all that's available to them. There's strong arguments for bootstrapping for certain types of businesses. There are some types that it just doesn't work.
Yes.
Business that need to scale, and so on. And there's some great benefits that the whole investment community brings because they naturally are going to invite you to deals you would never dream of getting invited to. So when you see startups getting these amazing deals, it's usually because the investor has positioned it so, because it's in their interest to make their
That's exactly right. And that said, of course, Chris, part and parcel of what gets people to get involved, even at early stages, is evidence of potential. So it's not just the idea, but the evidence that you can bring to bear about, well, we're not going to build it and hope they'll come. And if you do give us a lot of money, because you're quite right in terms of bootstrapping, that the longer, some people argue, the longer you can hold out, the better a deal you'll secure, but you may also miss the boat in terms of being able to scale and get at the breadth of opportunity that is really out there for you.
Yeah, and it has to be something that you want. I think it was John from VoiceAge who said, do you really want to scale, and what does that mean if you scale? Are you
Yes.
able? Do you have the management training? Because the biggest lesson I learned, you asked what were the kind of lessons you learned. The biggest lesson we learned was the whole managing of people. I mean, we had grown the business to 60 odd people, mostly engineers and consultants. And I can say, hand on heart, the biggest learning curve was people management. Now, we went away and we got the education. We went to IMI and we got management training and all that sort of stuff. But those are kind of things that startups need to know. They need to do that. They need to know.
Yes.
How you've got more than 10 people straight away. You have a HR function. You've got all that stuff that you've got to deal with, and you might think you are a coder or something.
Yes.
You just don't have those skills. So you either have to acquire them or partner with someone who has them. So those are all of the things that are going to happen to you, and then you can get run over. And I think we both have seen examples of where.
And tell me, did that color your views then about how you would then take on board your next venture? So when you were thinking about setting up Sensor Pro, or indeed the other things you've been involved in, did that color your views?
Well, yes, of course it did. Of course it did. And the first thing I tried to do was to do more with less. And how can we achieve the same result with less people? So so we wouldn't be jobs focused. We would be more focused on getting results. So those are things Enterprise Ireland aren't keen to hear, I guess, because they're more interested in the jobs.
So they do, and in point of fact, Enterprise Ireland will tell you up front that they also really look at the breadth of the team. And when you were talking about the skills bit earlier on, do you have the range of skills that you need to make things happen? And I don't just mean in terms of product development, also in other key elements like financial capacity, like the IT side of things, like, as you say, the HR. What about the marketing? What about the sales? Do you have a team when you go to bat that can deliver?
Yeah, so I mean, exactly. So if you put together a crack sales team who can execute well on a sales engine with strong technology, that is a great formula. But there's not a lot of that out there.
No, no. Well, so I've really enjoyed our wee chat this morning, this evening, I should say, Chris, and it's been fairly broad-ranging. So I want to thank you for taking time out of your day in Dingle.
Thank you, Eamon. It was great to talk with you.
Great to talk with you, and until the next time, I'm Eamon O'Brien, and you've been listening to the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series.